Are you confident? Do you have consistency? How much conviction do you have? I'm Daniel Gomez, the Confidence Architect, a business strategist, keynote speaker, executive coach, and best selling author. On the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, we will help you unlock confidence to create consistency and develop conviction. Together, we will discover the key that unlocks your confidence. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, where we motivate, encourage, but not only do we do that, we educate you. And I'll tell you today, we have an epic guest today. This guy is amazing. He's all the way in LA and I'm in SA. What are the odds of that, right? He's in LA and I'm in SA. I love to say that. But the truth is this, is that I connected with Collin here on LinkedIn and he brings a lot of value. So I'm going to welcome him to the show. Woo! Give him a cheering applause. Thank you, everybody, on the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show for welcoming this amazing man. And I'll tell you what, I've been excited about this episode, Collin. And man, I know the amazing person you are. We connected on LinkedIn, do a lot of things together in some of the groups, man. But introduce yourself to the Daniel Gomez Inspire Show, if you don't mind, Collin.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and then we can dig into whatever you think would be the most fun here. But thanks for having me on. Been looking forward to it. So yeah, I was raised by a single mom with four brothers, and my dad enjoyed spending his time in prison more than spending time with his kids. And so we grew up poor, and food stamps, government cheese. It was a struggle to pay the rent. Nobody really told me that it was important to go to school, so I barely made it through high school. College was not in the cards for me. And when I got my first sales job, I really saw it as my way out. And I was the first one in the office. I was the last one to leave. I came in on Saturdays to get my list ready. And now I have a life that I honestly could have never dreamed of.
Wow. Man, you said a lot in that opening statement. And ladies and gentlemen, I know Collin's going to drop a lot of wisdom here. So this is the part where I really want you to get out your pen and paper, because something magical happens when you, the viewer, the listener, puts pen to paper. You retain a lot more of the information. So get out your notepad, get out your journal, get out your pen, your pencil, your marker, whatever you want to do, and write some notes, because Collin's going to drop some wisdom. So Collin, what stood out to me is man, you didn't play the victim on this. I think so many times we grow up without a father, and you said your dad liked to hang out in prison more than he did with you. How does somebody overcome that to really just establish themselves and not play that victim mentality? And I want to start with the foundation, because I truly believe that the foundation of any entrepreneur business, it's mindset, right? Mm-hmm. So you can have all the skills you want in sales, you can have all the skills in business, but if your mindset stinks, you're not going to go anywhere. How did you overcome that part with being in that situation where your father wasn't around and you know that he was in prison, and just those decisions that he made? How did you overcome that as a youth growing into a young man and then the business owner?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I knew at the time, but I think, and I don't know if this was the healthiest choice, but it definitely fueled me. Just the sincere desire to not be like him really took me pretty far. And so not wanting to, follow his footsteps and be that type of man. And now I have three kids and number four on my way. Right. So even there's things that just, that happened to me as a kid that kind of fuel and have molded, the type of father that I want to be. Right. So, a lot of it was, I didn't know what I wanted to do as a kid. I didn't grow up with these deep passions of I want to do this particular thing. I just knew I didn't want to be poor, and I didn't want to struggle to pay the rent. And when I got my first, sales job, I just put everything I had into it to be the best version of myself. And I had some of my own struggles kind of early on as a kid in high school. I got in trouble. And, I think early on I saw hey, if I continue down this path, I'm going to end up just like him. And, and when I got that first job that I felt could actually be a career and not just, a paycheck and living check to check, in that kind of vicious cycle that a lot of people get stuck in. I said, I'm going to put everything I have into this. And, from there, I worked my way up to the top of that company pretty quickly. And then I got a VP of sales position at the age of, 24, and then started my first company at 26. And me and my wife built that to $5 million in annual revenue in 26 months.
Wow. Did you hear that? I gotta give you $5 million. Think about that. So this is what I got from that. So Collin, you took a negative. You didn't want to be like your own man. And I'll use the word dislike, right? Because hate's a strong word. You disliked them. You didn't want to be like them. And you took that energy. And I think so many men and women today, right? They take this negative energy and they turn it into a negative instead of a positive.
Yeah.
And they wanna retaliate, or they wanna be heard, and they want to be proven right. But you didn't do that. What I hear you say is, I took the fact that I didn't want to be like my own man. And how can I not be like him? And you use that energy in a positive way. You applied yourself. And I think so. You did two things, ladies and gentlemen. Write this down. He took the energy, turned it into a positive, and then he decided that he didn't want to be like that. And so many people, Collin, they don't decide for themselves. They don't make a decision. You did. What made you say, you know what, I'm going to really decide today? And what battles did you have to fight within yourself to get that decision making in your head and say, you know what, I'm going to make something of who I am and the best version of yourself? I want to hear that from you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think early on it was like really just to prove a point, right? Like that I could be better and make something of my life, and that kind of, that's not the healthiest fuel of motivation, but it kind of got me so far. And then like I had to do a lot of work on myself, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, to kind of work some of that stuff out where I didn't hate him, where I didn't, have that built up resentment that, where I didn't like, cause then it got to a place where I started to like tie my self-worth to like how much I produced, right? Where it was like, because of what was fueling the motivation, then it was like, if I had a good month or a bad month, that sort of, in my mind determined how valuable I was, and so I had to work through some of that stuff. And I had some personal challenges that I had to get to the other side of to be even more successful and be successful in a healthy way.
Someone's listening to this right now and they hate their mom, they hate their dad. Let's just be real, right? There's a lot of places where especially now in our country, in America, there's a lot of blended families, right? People get divorced. You bring your son, you bring your daughter, you bring your kids, and then there's even more, I'll use the word friction in the home. Talk to the audience, maybe those people right now, and tell them what are two things that you did to work on yourself to really move forward. That way you don't get stuck in that rut, to say.
Yeah, a few things. I mean, you gotta take a look at who you're surrounding yourself with. Like that's a big one. Like, are you around positive people? Are you around people that will be real with you? Right? Like, are you around people that are just going to co-sign anything that you do and tell you what you want to hear? Or do you have people that are, you can be honest with, and they're going to be honest with you, regardless if maybe they hurt your feelings, right?
Yeah.
I'd rather somebody be real with me than tell me what I want to hear, right? So surround yourself with some good, core people that are positive. That's a huge, piece of it. And then, I'm a big advocate of therapy. Like therapy helped me work through a lot of stuff. And finding a partner, like my wife is my best friend, and we work as a team and we respect each other. And it blows my mind how some couples treat each other. It's like, I can't believe it, and then it just makes me feel, how fortunate I am, that, she knows me well, and she can kind of counsel me through things when I'm having challenging moments. But you have a choice. Like you said it earlier on, like you can choose to be a victim and like poor me and poor my circumstances, and I don't have this, or I look like that, or I didn't have this growing up, or all of these things that could be reasons of why your life's not great. But you have a choice. You have a choice to sit there and be stuck and keep having that negative mindset, or you can flip it around and say, use it. I mean, that's like, you could use it as a superpower, like I have friends in business that don't have the same, experiences as me growing up, and things happen in business and man, they get stressed out. Like you swear the sky is falling where, the things that I had to deal with as a kid have molded and shaped me into the person that I am, where I can take on super challenging stuff. And it's like not a big deal, so you can use that as a superpower to, break through walls and accomplish things that other people would have extreme difficulty doing. And so like, as much as there's so many things that, happened to me as a kid and that I experienced and kids should never have to see. And, I wouldn't change any of it. I wouldn't change any
Oh
of it.
man, that's a boom right there, baby. I tell you what, listen to what Collin just said. What's your environment like, ladies and gentlemen? You can't put a goldfish on the ground and expect him to live. He's gonna die. What environment are you in? Who are you surrounding yourself with? And we've heard it, but I like the way he said it, right? Hang around positive people. The probability of positive things happening in your life are gonna go up considerably as to hanging around in the wrong environment. And think what he's saying today. You have to really, this is a problem that I see, and you said it in a different way, right? He found his wife. He found his friend. You can't do that alone. You can't do life alone. You can't do business alone. We need somebody, and somebody out there right now, you're either watching us here or you're listening, and you're trying to do it all by your own, and you think you're some superhero, but sooner or later you need help. We all need help. So write that down. Stop being prideful. Stop being egotistic. I was like that, Collin, right? I thought I was like, you know what? Screw everybody. I don't need them. And I came from a little bit from the car business because it was a different setup, but it worked in that car business to say for a while. But then sooner or later, you realize things at home ain't right because you bring that, right? You live in that superhero mentality of that mentality, and you think you can do it by yourself. And guess what? Sometimes you take it out on your kids or your wife, and it's not a good thing. So let's shift here. We got the foundation. You worked on your environment. You found your wife. And then you go do a crazy thing like sales. I love sales, right? This is the sales part I really want to get into because I think I always tell people when I do my corporate trainings, and it's like, oh yeah, well, sales. Yeah, I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to do this. And sales is good. And right when I became a professional car salesman, people were like, well, I don't like, that's like sleazy, right? You don't want to be. I'm like, I make more money than you do, woman, and I don't even have a college degree. But it's the reality, right? It's the perception of people have of sales. But what made you want to be in sales, and how did learning sales change your life?
Yeah. I love that question. So, I mean, how I wound up being in sales, like, so I have a sales podcast, right? And I've interviewed over 130 people. And the typical story is, hey, I went to school and wanted to do this, and it didn't work out, and sales was my plan B or my plan C or my fallback plan. Like I got into sales by accident, right? Like, or I, got into sales kicking and screaming, like, exactly what you said. Sales is sleazy. I don't want to do that. I don't want to persuade people and lie and do all these things that people think salespeople are. And for me, it was a little different. It wasn't like sales was my plan B or my fallback plan. Like, I literally had zero opportunities knocking at my door. So when a sales opportunity presented itself, like, I was very excited to take it. I was very pumped up. I was willing to put, all of myself into it. My first sales job was, I was a full cycle sales rep. And so that meant making a lot of calls. We sold transactional products. So, I was just, a lot of calls, building a lot of relationships. And, one thing that stuck with me early on was like, just if you outwork your competition, you'll be fine. And that took me, really far. And I learned some good things in that first job. I learned some bad things, some of the things that people don't like about salespeople. I treated a lot of my relationships very transactionally. The script was very much, warm people up and say something, funny and build some rapport, and then throw out an offer. And if they didn't buy, then you'd throw out another offer. And if they didn't buy something from you, then you'd change the subject. And then you'd throw it, because, psychologically, people can only say no so many times. So yes, you throw out another offer. And then my manager used to always say, if you don't get an order on that third offer, like, you better get a commitment for a future order. It was just doing a lot of that every day. but I picked up things that people were saying in the office. I learned quickly. I learned how to sort of, read people by their tone and the way that they, said things. And one of the biggest things was that I started picking up things that other people said. And then I started to realize, like, when I said certain things, if they didn't work, then I would adjust it, or I wouldn't say that again. So a lot of sales is learning through experience, and you can, take all the best trainings. You can have all the best scripts or whatever, but like, until you just like get the experience and kind of have your own experience and find a way that works best for you of showing up as the best version of yourself in your role, you're not going to have a ton of success.
I love what you're saying. You got to have fun too, right? You got to have fun. It looks like you were having fun just calling people, but you were willing to learn is what I sensed from you. You were like, hey, this didn't work. Let me ask again. Let me ask again. And I see so many. It breaks my heart because you there's so many entrepreneurs, solopreneurs that go out there.
Mm-hmm.
They leave that corporate job, that job, that 9 to 5, and then they never take on that role as far as a salesperson, and they don't want to embrace it. And then they wonder why their business isn't working, their business isn't growing, their business isn't anything. I say it all the time, right? Zero revenue is zero sales, right? Zero sales is zero revenue, and sooner or later you're going to be out of business. And we found that out in 2020. And even in 2021, there's still a hangover from that coming in. So what would you say to someone listening to this right now who says, but I just don't know? Because I think this is the cop out I think that too many entrepreneurs nowadays give. I just want to serve. Well, you're going to serve yourself broke is what I say, right? You're going to serve yourself out of business. What's your response to that?
Yeah. I like this question a lot because it's so important, right? I mean, you can be the best at whatever you do, or you could think you have the best product, or maybe you actually have the best product, or, whatever it is that you do. Like, nobody's going to care if you don't know how to sell. And, you got to have those skills. So like, before you go full entrepreneur or even side hustle, like, get some good, solid sales foundation skills before, because I don't care what you do. If you don't get that experience, if you don't nail that, if you don't have that, your entrepreneurship or your side hustle is going to have an expiration date.
I love that. That's a boom right there. Let me give you a you hear that?
Yeah.
If you don't get any sales skills in your business, in your small business enterprise, you got to bring Collin or Daniel Gomez in and do some training for y'all. You're going to be out of businesses. You're going to expire because you got to sell. You have to. However you think, you may not like it, you got to embrace a point of it. Because did you not listen to you're here. We're here already into the episode, and you might have missed the first segment that Collin said he took his business in 2.5 years to $5 million in revenue. He didn't do that by looking good. Not that he's not good looking, but he did it because he knew how to produce sales. $5 million, ladies and gentlemen. Talk to us about that. So you're doing full cycle. You leave that. You decide to embark on your own business. And in 2.5 years, correct me if the time's wrong, you get up to over $5 million in revenue. Now, how does somebody do that?
Yeah. So I had that first sales position, and then they promised me a manager role. And, they said, hey, if you do these things, we'll give you, a leadership role. And I did those things, and they didn't give me a leadership role. So I left, and I took a VP of sales position at another company doing the same thing. And I learned a lot more there. So I learned how to manage a team. To full transparency, I was not ready to manage a team. Like, I just wasn't. I had to learn managing people through the experience, and that meant like making mistakes and failing and learning, at their expense, which is not ideal. But I worked and I pushed through that. And then eventually my wife, we were just dating at the time, and she was, working in recruiting, sales, and she was kind of unhappy with her job. And I said, why don't you come over here, learn a little bit about what we're doing, see if you think maybe this is like something we could do on our own one day. And And so she did, and she did well, and we were doing well, and I was building a team, and we drove, millions of revenue for that company. And then the time came where it was time to leave, and we wanted to start our own thing. And our first office was our living room in our 1-bedroom apartment. And it was, we were working a lot. We worked long hours, getting started, keeping our expenses low, building the company, managing cash flow, which can be stressful, and then we hired our first salesperson, and then we hired a few more salespeople, and then we got an office. We outgrew that office, and then we outgrew our next office, and that was kind of the theme for a while. And we, built that to 5 million in revenue, all through fueled by sales. We spent $0 on marketing, nothing fancy, just building, recruiting, and training salespeople. And we had some really key good hires, and we had some really solid people that would, be top producers at any company. And it was a lot of fun. And then I kind of started to get away from the stuff that I enjoyed most, right? You get to like a $5 million company, and then there's like a lot other problems and things to think about that you never thought you had to think about before. Like, now maybe we should spend money on marketing. Now maybe we should start adding these other, services and products to our, lineup, and all of these other things, and started to get kind of fancy. And we failed at a lot of those. We made a lot of mistakes, and a lot of the stuff that we did was very transactional. So I was, and our industry was changing. So I was really trying to find like some recurring revenue services that we could add to our lineup. And after, going through like hiring specialists and hiring consultants and spending money on marketing and building up debt, after we built this very successful company, a lot of those things failed. And a lot of learning happened in that. And I was like, you know what? I don't like doing all this, and I need to just get back in the trenches, doing sales, managing and training people, which is what I love most. And realize that I need to stay in my lane. If trying to figure out how to do marketing and stuff, that's not my thing.
Yeah.
That's not my lane, And so, eventually, what happened there was, because we were such a heavy on the phone sales team, we relied on our phones a lot. We had tons of problems all of the time. Our phones would go down. I'd come in, the whole team would be upset. They'd get there and work. They'd be there at 5 a.m. In the morning trying to work the East Coast, and the phones would be down. And we don't make money if we're not on the phone. And so eventually, after like switching phone vendors like 5 different times, there was a techie guy in my building. He's like, I think I can put a solution together that'll work better than all this stuff you've tried. And I was like, I'll do anything. Like, and so he put up a virtual server and loaded the software and connected it to these trunks. And I don't know, it was like a duct tape solution, and it worked better than anything else that we had previously. The salespeople weren't upset anymore. The phones weren't down. And I'm like, boom, I think there's more people that have this same problem. So we went and got some feedback, and yes, people did. So we started another company. I started a unified communications company, and we built that to over 6,000 users.
Wow, man. So let me ask you this, because people are listening to this like, well, yeah, Collin, it sounds great, right? You're everything you do is good, but I know there has to be a part where Collin lost his confidence, and one of those losses maybe kind of hit you in the gut. And sometimes we really don't know what we're made of till we get hit in the gut. Believe me, I get hit in the gut a lot myself, but you got to take those risks. There's no reward without risk. I always say that.
Yeah.
When on your journey as you're growing to 5 million and then embarking on this new telecommunications business, where did you lose your confidence, and what did you learn about yourself, and how did you regain it?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, when we were trying to add these different services before before I started the unified communications company, we kind of had failed twice at launching 2 other services, and we were launching a 3rd service. We got a couple of bunts and a couple of singles, no doubles, no triples, definitely no home runs. And we had brought on a guy who had some experience in selling this service, and really liked the guy, and had big hopes for this, service. We had some early on wins, that kind of had built the confidence, like, hey, maybe this is the one that's going to work, right? After 2 services trying to launch had failed. And eventually, we spent a bunch of money on marketing. We spent a lot of money on his salary. We hired a special consultant, and eventually, we had to pull the plug on that. And it was a big punch to the gut because, I really liked the guy. He had kids. Like, when you have a business, like, it's never fun to let somebody go. And it's one thing to let somebody go for poor performance, or, for, something that they did wrong, that's easier to do. Right. But when it's like literally because you feel like you failed at something, and you can no longer afford that salary, and you got to let that person go, that's a big punch to the gut.
What you learn about yourself at that moment, right? Because that's not.
Yeah.
I love what we're talking about, because sometimes it's it's businesses shift, people don't work out, or the product doesn't work out. And what did you learn about yourself at that moment, Colin?
Yeah. In that moment, I learned that sometimes you got to make tough decisions, and sometimes you make good decisions, sometimes you make bad decisions. But you can't let those define you, and you got to try to have a positive mindset to at least see the value in what you learned through that experience. Right. And in that particular experience, we were trying to become something that we weren't. I was rushing into a lot of things and probably trying to take shortcuts, and I was trying to jump into services and things that people had, decades of experience in doing that we had no business getting into.
Well, I love that. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes just in business, you have to be honest with yourself. And I love what he says, because one thing that I always train on, Colin, is I say shortcuts equal short paychecks. Right?
Yeah.
Shortcuts equal short paychecks. There's no way around it. And you have to be honest with yourself. And you're listening to this and you're like, man, why isn't my business growing? Why is it stale? Why is my life just stuck? Well, where in your life are you taking shortcuts? Where in your life? Ask yourself, write that question down right now on your paper, on your journal. Where in my life, where in my business am I taking shortcuts?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you take shortcuts, usually you're not going to win that way. You might win temporarily, but sooner or later it's going to catch up to you. And I love your honesty, just being authentic here, Colin, because I know it's not an easy subject to talk about sometimes, but people need to hear that, because everybody thinks we're just winning. And of course you're winning, but sometimes you got to lose to win, right? You don't really lose until you give up. So what makes Collin Mitchell distinctive? What makes him unique? What's different about Collin that makes him say, why not me?
Yeah. I would say one thing that's probably distinct about me is just my love for a challenge. I've started 4 companies. Three have been successful. I'm on my 4th now. For the first time, I have a partner, and the work that we do is just a lot of fun. It's very enjoyable. It's very fulfilling. We have a mission. I'm getting ready to write a book. There's just all kinds of good work, and everything that I've done and all of the experiences have kind of led up to this point, and I love a challenge. And, my childhood experiences have given me sort of the tenacity and the grit and the resiliency, to take on those challenges head on.
I love what you're saying, because the word that stuck out to me is resilient. There's too many of us, we don't have that resiliency anymore. We don't got that elephant skin. We go from that, we want everything to be easy. You got to get that thick skin back. You got to be resilient about it. And you're right. I remember in the beginning of the year I was there, and I told my wife, I think God wants us to start doing podcast launching. And she's like, what? Yeah, I think he wants us to do book publishing. She goes, well, right, because people are like, well, what do you mean? I go, well, yeah, well, I'm a speaker, but in that speaking lane, most speakers have a book. Most speakers, some of them want to go the podcast route, but it's like they're products within our lane to say. And you're like, man, it can be scary to say, I mean, to be honest with you, but if you don't try, you'll never know. And I can tell you that our business is really almost doubled from last year because of those 2 products that we added. And like you said, it's challenging. I think I got a gray hair because of it. So do me a favor right now. This is a part of the show where I like our guests to look in the camera and talk to that individual right now that's thinking about giving up in business. They've hit some bricks. Bricks have hit them in the face, maybe, right? They got punched in the gut like you did.
Yeah.
Talk to that person and give them a word of inspiration, a word of encouragement, if you don't mind, Colin.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing is like your biggest competition is yourself. Right. And if you get stuck in comparing yourself to other people who maybe from the outside look successful, you're in big trouble. So your big competition is yourself, right? So your mental toughness, your mindset, that's what you need to work on. A lot of people think like, oh, I need to get better at these hard skills, or I need to get better at, delivering for my clients. And yes, those things are important, but what's more important is like, what are you doing to invest in yourself personally, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically? All of those things matter way more than you think, because if you work on those things, then the professional side becomes a lot easier.
Boom, baby. Woohoo! There it is. Collin Mitchell dropping some wisdom right there. Work on you. Work on you. Man, I think so many times we look on the outside and we look at the people, right? And we think that they're the problem. And many times, Collin, from what you just said, it's us. We need to change. We need to grow. We need something, because what we're getting, the results we're getting, it's not working. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. What are your top 3 business advice that you would give, that you can give to our audience, that they can take away from this episode today? What are top 3 golden nuggets, however you want to describe them?
Top 3. Invest in yourself personally. Like I mentioned, I'm going to go back to that one, and on all fronts, right? Physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Take care of you. If you can take care of you, you can show up as the best version of yourself professionally, in your role, in entrepreneurship, in your side hustle, whatever you do. That's number 1. Number 2, consistency. Consistency is key in everything you do. So if you're having a sales problem, maybe you're having a prospecting problem. So create a habit and have some consistency around solving that problem. So working on yourself, consistency. And then number 3 is like, never stop learning. Don't ever think you got it all figured out. Keep listening to podcasts, keep following the right people on social media, positive, surround yourself with, positive people. Maybe you invest in courses, whatever it is that you need to do, never stop learning.
Man, dude, you're dropping some wisdom here. Let me ask you this. So this year, you've been successful, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm a big believer, right? Earners are learners. And I always say you got to unlearn some bad things. You got to relearn some things, and you got to learn some new things. And to prove your point, right? Because you've generated over $5 million in revenue. You've had 3 successful businesses. What's something new that you learned this year in 2021 that you're like, you had an aha moment. You're like, I want to throw this out there, because so many people think they've arrived, right? They hit that first 6 figures, which really isn't anything in business, because by the time you're taxed, it's like, hey, you're in the negative already. I'm just being silly, but what I'm trying to say is, but you are, you've had success. What is something that you learned this year that we're like, wow, I wish I would have learned this maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago?
Yeah. That's a tough question. This year, something that this is a simple thing. It's just a very, very simple thing. 2 things that I did this year, and I'm more productive, I have more energy, and I'm in full crush it mode while I'm in my office. 2 things. I invested in a standing desk, and I drink a gallon of water a day. And if you want to like even level up from there, is I don't go to the gym anymore, but I swim every morning. That's part of my routine. But what I do at the office is I do push-ups all day. So every time I go get my lunch, I go to the bathroom, I get coffee, whatever. When I walk back in, I do 50 push-ups. And so I typically do about 500 push-ups a day. And so doing that physical 500 push-ups, 500. Yeah.
Wow.
So those 3 things, like the push-ups, the water, the standing, I'm just fully energized all day, and I'm more productive. And they're just like little hacks that I've implemented that have served me extremely well.
Well, I'm curious, right? Because I have a desk that stands up. I'm in my high chair right now, but sometimes I do stand up when I speak, when I do a virtual conference for an organization or a corporation. How has that benefited you? What's the biggest takeaway you think? Because I think that'll definitely drop some.
Yeah. So it's
here.
when you're sitting in a chair and I don't work crazy hours. Like I literally work 8.5 hours and I'm home by 4:30 every day with my family. But you're sitting in a chair for 8 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours, whatever you work. I don't know. You get back pains, you get uncomfortable. It's easy to have bad posture. And you don't have the same energy. You don't have the same blood flow. Like you said, when you speak or you're doing a virtual, like you stand, probably because you have better energy. You can be more convincing. You can say things with more conviction. You can, get a crowd riled up, right? You can be more energetic in what you do. So if your business is building relationships and on sales calls and going on podcasts or whatever you do, don't you want to bring more energy to those relationships, to those conversations? And so if you can sustain standing all day, why not?
Because of you, I'm going to be committed to raising this riser. I don't know what you call it. I spent $300 for it, but I use it every once in a while. But because of you, I'm going to try that. I'm going to commit myself to 90 days, right? I'm going to push to the 90 days and see what difference in me, because it's true. Sometimes you get that fatigue, and I'm going to do that. What's a quote or a scripture that you rely on when times get tough that you say to yourself? A quote or a scripture that you say to yourself, Collin?
There's one that's new, that's kind of top of mind to me, just because this one of these awesome podcast episodes that we edited recently about high-fiving yourself in the mirror. And I've been wanting to try that as a new routine. But here's kind of one thing, right, is for me that's like true to my experience. Is through my sales experience, when I got started early on, it was all about always be closing, right? Always be closing, and now I really try to live by just always be helping.
Ooh, say that again. That's a good set.
I like to say
always be what?
Always be helping.
Always be helping. Man, dude, you've added some massive value today. How do we get a hold of you? Somebody's into this episode. How do they connect with you?
Yeah.
What's your website? Talk to us, my friend.
Very, very simple. Whatever podcast platform you are enjoying this episode on today, you can check out and search Sales Transformation, where we drop 5 episodes a week, Monday through Friday.
Sales Transformation on all platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, hey, Collin, thank you for joining us, man. This has been an amazing. I took some notes. I think my biggest takeaway was this: always be helping. Always be helping. And then what you said earlier, right? You have to really always keep learning. We're reminded of that daily, because if when you're green, you grow. When you ripe, you rot. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you took some amazing notes. As we come to an end of this amazing episode, this is Daniel Gomez Inspires. If you're stuck in life, if you're stuck in business, go to our website, danielgomezglobal.com, with our Show to Faith coaching. We'll help you in life. We'll help you in business. If you're stuck, you need to create more revenue, we can help you with that. But if you don't reach out to us, we cannot help you at all. So go to www.danielgomezglobal.com, and with our Show to Faith coaching, we'd love to help you. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap for this week's episode. We'll see you here on the Daniel Gomez Inspires Show. This is Daniel Gomez, and thank you so much for tuning into our show today. We'd love your feedback. Please drop us a comment, and thank you for leaving us a review. Don't forget to subscribe to our show and share this episode with a friend. And my free gift for listening to our show today is a copy of my best-selling book, You Were Born to Fly. To get your free copy, go to danielgomezinspires.com and get your copy today. That's danielgomezinspires.com. And to elevate your life and business even more, follow me on social media at Daniel Gomez Inspires on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Together, we will discover the key that unlocks your confidence.